All the girls wanted the Korean Mafia's Heir, except the new quiet black girl he really liked. Mary was the new transfer student of Hanguk Elite University. And unlike every girl in Hanguk Elite University who wanted Kwon Hale, Mary was uninterested, and she was the one girl Hale found interesting. If you find high school stories interesting, then you're in the right place, because this story is all the high school romance and drama you need. Ensure to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell right now, because we tell Afro-Korean romance stories like these on this channel every single week, and you do not want to miss what is coming. Now let us tell you a bit about the new black girl that left her home to come to Seoul. The lights of Seoul, from 10,000 meters, looked like someone had spilled a jar of gold across the ground and never bothered to clean it up. Mary Asante had her forehead against the cold plane window and her scholarship letter folded in her jacket pocket, creased from being opened and refolded too many times over the past 3 weeks. She had read it so many times she could recite it. Full academic scholarship, Hanguk Elite University, Department of International Relations and Policy. 4 years. 4 years in Seoul. She thought about her mother standing at the Kotoka airport that morning, holding her face in both hands the way she did when she was trying to memorize something. You call me when you land. You call me the minute you land, Mary. I don't care what time it is here. She had nodded. Her mother had pulled her in for a hug that lasted longer than either of them planned for, and then stepped back and straightened Mary's jacket collar, even though it didn't need straightening. Something to do with her hands. Mary had walked through the departure gate without looking back, because if she had looked back, she would have seen her mother's face, and then she would not have walked through it. She looked at Seoul below her now, enormous, blazing, completely indifferent to the fact that she was arriving in it. Okay, she thought. Okay. She put the scholarship letter back in her pocket and straightened up in her seat. The university gates of Hanguk Elite appeared at 8 in the morning, grand, stone, the kind of entrance that was designed to make you feel the weight of what you were walking into. Mary walked through them with one large bag on her back and the particular focused expression of someone who has decided not to be overwhelmed. The courtyard was busy, students crossing in every direction, groups clustered near the steps, the noise of 100 conversations layered on top of each other. And then, not all at once, but like a wave moving outward, from where she stood, it began. A girl walking past slowed, stopped, pulled her friend's sleeve without taking her eyes off Mary. Wait, is she a new student? Has to be. I've never seen her. No. 2 boys at the steps noticed. One nudged the other. Is she a transfer? She must be. Wait, is she? Another black girl? Didn't we literally just have one? Last semester? A group near the fountain, 3 girls, phones already rising. Why is she walking like that though? Like what? Like I don't know, like she owns the place or something. She looks so, she's actually kind of pretty. Shh, she might hear you. Do you think she speaks Korean? Someone should tell her about the actually never mind. Mary heard every word, every single one. She had good hearing, and the whispers were not as quiet as the people making them believed. Her face gave nothing. Straight spine, eyes forward. She had decided on the plane that whatever this place threw at her in the first 5 minutes, she was not going to flinch at it. And she was a person who kept her decisions. She found the administration building, got her dormitory key, found her room small, clean, a window that looked out onto a courtyard below. She unpacked with quiet efficiency, hanging things, stacking things, making the small space hers in the particular way that people who have had to make unfamiliar spaces theirs quickly develop. Then she sat on the edge of the bed. The room was very quiet, very far from Accra. She sat with that for exactly 60 seconds. Then she stood up, picked up her bag, and went to find the library. The library was the first place she really exhaled. High ceilings, long windows. The particular quality of silence that only exists where books are kept in large numbers. Not empty silence, but a full one, occupied by the weight of accumulated thought. She found a corner table on the 3rd floor, set down her bag, spread out her Korean language textbook and her policy reading list, and felt her shoulders come down from where they had been sitting since the airport. She had been there perhaps 20 minutes working through vocabulary, building the careful architecture of a language she had been studying for a year and a half, and still did not fully trust herself in when someone dropped into the seat across from her. No asking, just appeared. She looked up sharply. A boy, brown skin, easy open face, with eyes that were already slightly amused about something. He had set a coffee cup from the vending machine down in front of her side of the table, like he was making a peace offering. She stared at the coffee, stared at him. "You look like you're about to fight that textbook," he said, in English, with the particular confidence of someone who has correctly identified something. "I don't know you," she said. "Not yet," he said cheerfully. "That coffee's for you. The machine on the second floor actually works. The one on this floor is a scam. Don't use it." He settled back in his seat. "I'm Daniel." She looked at him for another moment, then at the coffee, then back at him. "How did you know I spoke English?" "Because you were muttering at your textbook in it," he said. "Also, your reading list is in English. Also, and you're Ghanaian, right? Of course you'd speak English fluently." He nodded at her bag. "That's a University of Ghana library sticker." She looked down at her bag. There was indeed a University of Ghana library sticker that she had completely forgotten about. "Mary," she said, after a pause. "First week?" he asked. "Second day." He nodded with the gravity of someone who has been through something and survived it. The staring. "Yes. It doesn't stop completely," he said, "but it gets easier to stop caring about. By week 3, you'll be walking through this courtyard like..." He did an impression of someone extremely unbothered. "You know, you'll find your thing." End quote. "I have my thing," she said, gesturing at her books. "Good," he said. "That's a good thing to have." She looked at him properly. He had the face of someone who was not going to be easily gotten rid of and who knew it and was not apologetic about it. She decided she did not entirely mind. They talked not formally, not in the way of people introducing themselves, but in the way of people who have recognized something in each other and are following the thread of it. He told her things about the school, the layout, the cafeteria that was worth going to, and the one that wasn't, which professors were fair and which ones weren't, the social architecture that governed everything from where you sat to how you were talked about. He told her about it the way someone who has mapped a difficult territory tells someone who has just arrived not to frighten, but to orient. And then he got to a particular name and paused. She noticed the pause. "There's one person," he said, "that you'll probably hear about before the week is out." "Who?" Daniel turned his coffee cup slowly in his hands. "Kwon Hale." He said it the way people say the names of weather systems. His family, they're connected to this university at a level that's not really about academics. His father's name opens things and closes things in this city. He paused. "Just don't get in his way. Not because I don't know what kind of person he is, honestly, but the world around him has weight." Mary filed this carefully. "What does he look like?" "Tall, dark hair. Looks like he's never smiled voluntarily in his life." Daniel tilted his head. "You'll know him when you see him. Trust me." "Why?" she asked. "You'll understand when it happens," he said. "Just be careful. That's all." She nodded, looked back at her textbook. Filed Kwon Hale in the part of her mind marked noted. 2 days later, Mary was at her corner table. It had already become her corner table, the way places become yours, when you return to them with enough consistency and intention. Books spread across the entire surface, locks pulled up, earphones in. She was working through a dense Korean legal text with the focused aggression of someone who refuses to be defeated by grammar, and she was somewhere else, entirely in her head. The library shifted. She registered it the way you register a change in pressure, not consciously, not immediately, but somewhere in the body before the mind catches up. The particular quality of noise in the room altered. Voices dropped. Movement slowed. She was aware, distantly, of the library rearranging itself around something. She finished her sentence, turned a page. Footsteps, stopping near her table, not at her table, near it. Then a different set of footsteps, coming closer. a presence at her table directly, a shadow falling across her page. Hey! She took her earphones out, looked up. A young man she didn't recognize, sharp-faced jacket, the particular posture of someone who was used to standing slightly behind someone important. He was looking at her the way people look at something that is occupying space they have already allocated elsewhere. You're going to have to move, he said. Mary looked at him, then at the table, then back at him. Sorry? This table, he said it, like it was already resolved, like they were past the part where she might have questions. Find somewhere else. She set her pen down slowly. I got here first. That's not really. That's exactly how it is. Unless you have your name stamped here, she snapped back. She looked around the library with the expression of someone conducting a reasonable search. Because I've been sitting here for an hour, and I am really comfortable where I am sitting. Look, it's just, if there's no name here, she said, then it's a public table, and I got here first, so. She picked her pen back up. The young man opened his mouth, closed it. Leave it. Quiet. From somewhere behind him. Not loud. It was never loud. But it had the particular quality of a voice that had never needed volume to be heard. The young man turned. Mary looked past him. Quan Hale was standing several feet away. He was not looking at her. He was looking at his associate with the mild expression of someone correcting a minor inconvenience. He said something in Korean, short, simple, that Mary caught enough of to understand as, just find another one, it doesn't matter. The associate closed his mouth. They moved away, Hale leading, his associate following, two others she hadn't noticed, falling in behind them. They settled at a table across the library. Mary watched them go. Her eyes settled on Heir's back. Then, as he pulled out his chair and sat down his profile, she studied it for a moment, with the quiet assessment she gave to anything she was trying to understand. That's probably him. She recognized him not from the description, though the description fit, but from the quality of the room around him, the way everything had adjusted. Daniel had said the room changes when he walks in, and she had thought that was an exaggeration. It wasn't. She looked at him for a moment, longer than she meant to. Then, she put her earphones back in and returned to her sentence. Across the library, Quan Hail opened his book. He did not read it. He stared at the page and thought about the girl at the corner table who had looked at Junjun, who nobody looked at directly because of who stood behind him, and asked, completely calmly, if there was a name. He had heard it from across the library. Everyone had heard it. The quality of silence that had followed her question was the kind that meant a room of people were all thinking the same thing at the same time. He had told June to leave it because it was a library table, and it genuinely didn't matter. That was the rational reason, the complete reason. He turned a page he hadn't read. He had been in this school for 2 years. He could not think of a single time anyone had looked at June that way. He turned another page. He still wasn't reading. He told himself it was because the library was a different kind of quiet now, or perhaps it had always been this quiet, and he had never sat far enough from his usual table to notice. He told himself he was just thinking. He was always thinking about something. He was not specifically thinking about the way she had picked her pen back up. He looked up once, just briefly, across the library. She was already writing, completely gone back into whatever she had been doing before any of it happened, like it had cost her absolutely nothing. Quan Hai looked back at his book. He read the same paragraph 4 times. Part 4, Gravity. She started noticing him the way you notice a recurring detail in a text. Once you have seen it, you cannot stop seeing it. He was in the east wing of the library on Tuesday, when she always worked there. He was at the campus cafe on Thursday, 2 tables from where she sat. He was crossing the courtyard on Friday afternoon, when she was crossing it in the opposite direction, and their paths didn't intersect, but she registered the precise moment they almost did. She noticed because she noticed things. It was her nature and her training, and she had long stopped trying to switch it off. She didn't mention it to Daniel. Daniel, however, had the observational instincts of someone who had survived 2 years at this school by paying close attention to things. So, he said one afternoon, sliding his cafeteria tray across from hers with the studied casualness of someone who had been waiting to say something. "How's the library?" "Fine," she said. "Yeah? Nothing interesting happening in the library?" "Daniel, I'm just asking about your studies, your academic life. I'm being supportive. You're being nosy. Those can be the same thing," he said pleasantly, and ate his food. Their first real conversation happened on a Wednesday afternoon. She was working through a Korean political theory text that was defeating her, not the vocabulary. She had the vocabulary, but the sentence construction kept doing something strange, where the meaning shifted depending on which element you weighted. And she was muttering about it in English and Twi, in a mixture she was not aware was audible until a voice from somewhere to her left said, without any particular investment, "You're reading it backwards." She stopped, turned. Heir was 2 tables away, reading something else entirely. He had not looked up. "Excuse me?" "The structure," he said, still not looking up. "In that kind of sentence, the important word is always at the end. You're waiting the beginning. That's why it doesn't make sense." She looked back at the text. "Read it again with that adjustment. Read it a 3rd time." He was right. The entire meaning of the passage reorganized itself. She sat with that for a moment. "Thank you," she said. He said nothing. "Turn the page." She looked at him. "Do you study policy?" "No." "Then how do you?" "I read," he said simply. "A lot." She looked at him for another moment, then back at her text. They were quiet, both of them reading. And then she said something about the passage, not to him, almost to herself, working through a point aloud, and he responded, and she responded to that, and somehow 20 minutes passed, and they were arguing in low voices about whether the text's framework was descriptive or prescriptive, and the librarian on the floor below had looked up at the ceiling twice. She realized at some point that he had moved tables. She wasn't sure exactly when. He was now directly across from her, his book open, and neither of them had remarked on it. He had not planned to move tables. He had planned, to the extent that he had planned anything, to say the thing about the sentence structure, which was obvious and would have bothered him to leave unsaid, and then return to his own work. Clean. Done. The strange, persistent thing in his head about the corner table and the girl at it would resolve itself the way strange, persistent things resolved themselves, which was by fading once you had satisfied the curiosity. That was the plan. The plan had not accounted for her saying something about the passage, almost to herself, clearly not expecting a response that was exactly wrong in the most interesting possible way. He had responded before he had decided to, and she had come back at him immediately with a counter-argument that was partly correct and partly infuriating and entirely worth engaging with. He was now sitting across from her, and they were arguing about political theory in a library, and he was, for the first time in a very long time, not performing anything. He was not being the heir. He was not managing the room. He was not monitoring exits or reading the social temperature of his surroundings the way he had been trained to do since he was old enough to understand what his name meant. He was just arguing about a text with a girl who was not impressed by him and was not pretending to be and was not performing not being impressed either. She just genuinely wasn't. She was interested in the argument. That was all. He couldn't explain what that felt like. He wasn't sure he had the right word for it. He stayed at the table. Bexore appeared on a Friday. She came into the library with 2 friends, unhurried, immaculate, the entrance of someone who has never had to announce herself because rooms do it for her. She found Hale immediately. Her eyes went to him the way they always did, with the ease of long practice and long expectation. Then they moved, precisely, to the girl across from him. She took in everything. The table, the books between them, the particular comfortable quality of 2 people who had been sitting together long enough that the space between them had stopped being formal. Her expression did not change, not even slightly. She greeted Heir warmly, easy, familiar, the register of someone who has known a person so long they have their own private frequency with them. She spoke about a family dinner that weekend, something her mother had asked her to pass along, something social and light. She did not acknowledge Mary directly. When she left, she paused at the door, looked back. Her amber eyes found Mary's directly. Mary looked back. She did not look away. Sore left. Mary returned to her book. Heir was already reading again. But the air in the library was different, and both of them knew it, and neither of them said anything about it. That evening she told Daniel. He listened with the expression of a man receiving news he had expected and not been looking forward to. She looked back at you specifically? On her way out, Mary confirmed. And you stared back? I wasn't going to look away first. Mary, he put his fork down. That's Bexori. I know who she is. Their families. I know. She's been. Daniel. Mary looked at him levelly. I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting in a library, reading. I'm not responsible for who sits across from me. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. You know what the problem is? What? You're not scared of the right things, he said. That's both your best quality and the thing that's going to give me gray hair. You're 20, she said. I'm aging in real time because of you, he said, and picked his fork back up. She took the long route back from her Thursday evening lecture because she liked the small garden that ran along the east wall of the campus. Something grew there that she hadn't identified yet. Something with small white flowers that had a smell that settled her chest in a way that felt faintly like home without being exactly like home. She heard voices before she reached the garden gate. Low, tense. The particular frequency of a conversation that was happening under significant pressure. She slowed. Through the garden hedged the small courtyard beyond it. Two people, Heir and an older man she had not seen before, well dressed. The kind of still that comes from long practice with authority. The conversation was in Korean and moving too fast for her to follow completely, but she caught the shape of it. Something owed, something expected. The tone of a man who was reminding someone of an obligation they did not have the option to forget. She caught Hale's responses between the older man's words. Quiet. Each word placed deliberately. Not agreeing, not quite, but not refusing outright, either. The sound of someone holding something, a line, a position, by sheer sustained effort. The older man left. His footsteps faded. The courtyard went quiet. Hale stood alone in it. She could see his profile through the hedge. And for the first time since she had known him, since the library table, since the political theory argument, since the cafe and the East Wing and all of it, he looked like the weight he was carrying was actually heavy. Like, when the audience left, he stopped holding it up. She hadn't planned to step around the hedge. She did it before she had finished deciding. He turned sharply, saw her, and the composure came back. Not slowly. It was fast. He was practiced, but she had seen the moment before it arrived. The air between them did something complicated. I take this route every evening, she said. I wasn't following you. He looked at her. She could see him making a calculation, not threat level, something else. Whether she was frightened, whether she would perform being frightened, whether she was going to make this into something. She just looked back at him, hands loose, expression, the same one she gave everything she was trying to understand before she decided what she thought about it. How much did you hear? He asked. Enough to know it wasn't a nice conversation, she said. Not enough to repeat it. A long silence. You should go home, he said finally. Not unkind, just tired. In a way, she had not heard from him before. She nodded, turned, stopped. You sounded, she said, still facing away, like someone who hasn't given up yet. There was a small pause. That's different from someone who's already lost. She walked away through the garden, the white flowers, the smell that was almost like home. Behind her, she heard nothing. But she knew he was still standing there. He stood in the courtyard for a long time after her footsteps faded. His father's voice was still in his ears, the particular register his father used when he was not asking, when the shape of the conversation was simply a formality before compliance. He had sat through versions of that conversation his entire life. He knew every beat of it. He knew when to deflect and when to give ground, and how to make not agreeing sound different enough from refusing that it bought him time without creating a confrontation he couldn't manage yet. He was very good at that. He had learned young. What he had not expected tonight was to stand in the courtyard afterward and hear a voice from the garden say, without drama, without particular warmth, without anything performed about it at all. You sounded like someone who hasn't given up yet. He turned it over, the precise way she had said it, still facing away, like it was just an observation she was leaving behind, like she wasn't waiting for anything from it, no comfort in it, no pity, just a fact she had noted, offered, and walked away from. He didn't know what to do with that. He didn't know what to do with any of it. The library, the argument about the text that he had stayed for far longer than he had planned, the way she had looked back at Sore at the library door without flinching, the way she had held her pen while she told June there was no name. He did not, as a rule, think about specific people this much. He looked at the garden gate where she had gone through. He went home. He did not sleep well. Sore moved the way water moves through stone, not by force but by patience, by finding the place that was already slightly worn and returning to it consistently until the structure gave. The first move was social. Whispers that found Mary everywhere she went, not shouted, never to her face, always just slightly behind her, or around the corner, or across a table she was not sitting at. Has anyone actually checked how she got that scholarship? She's always at his table. Doesn't it seem a bit calculated? I mean, what does she actually contribute? She barely speaks Korean. Someone told me the scholarship process was irregular. She came from nowhere, and suddenly she is desperate for Heir's attention. Mary heard it. She was not the kind of person who didn't hear things just because they were said behind her back. She carried it the way she had learned to carry things, without letting it reach her posture, her face, or her pace. But she heard it. The second move arrived in her dormitory mailbox on a Tuesday morning. A formal notice her scholarship documentation required additional verification. 3 submitted documents under review. Housing stipend frozen pending resolution. She read it twice, set it on her desk, read it once more. Then she went and found Daniel and handed it to him without saying anything. He read it. His expression shifted through several things quickly before it settled on something controlled. Mary, I know, she said. This can't just an admin error. I know. We should go to the admin. No, she said. I'm going to handle it. If they want more information, I'll give it to them. Mary, this is Daniel. She looked at him. I study policy. I specifically study how institutions exercise power and how to navigate and challenge that exercise. This, she gestured at the letter, is institutional pressure, and I know exactly how to fight it. She paused. Let me fight it. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed, the specific sigh of a person who knows they are not going to win this and is making peace with that. Fine, he said, but I'm here. Whatever you need, whatever time, I'm here. I know, she said, and meant it completely. She spent 2 weeks navigating the administration with a precision that would have surprised people who didn't know her and surprised nobody who did. She arrived at offices on time. She brought documentation they hadn't asked for because she had anticipated what they would ask for next. She was patient with people who were stalling in ways they thought were invisible, professional with people who were clearly uncomfortable. She asked clear questions and wrote down every answer and noted every name. She resolved 2 of the 3 documentation issues herself entirely. The third remained blocked, not by accident, not by bureaucratic slowness, by a deliberate, invisible, sustained hand that knew exactly which pressure points to hold. She sat in the campus cafe one evening and looked at what remained and mapped it clearly. She could not resolve it through the administrative channels. They had been closed to her specifically, carefully, in a way that left no fingerprints. There was going to have to be another way. She was still working out what that way was when the assembly announcement came through. Okay, wait a minute. Tell us if you think Mary will be able to get through this unscathed, or will she lose her scholarship in the process? Tell us what you think about Sore and her evil plans. Also, don't forget to tell us where you are watching from in the comments. We love to read your thoughts. If you're enjoying the story, then hit the like button. It motivates us to do better. Also, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Now let's get back to the story. Hanguk Elite's monthly student affairs assembly was held in the main hall, a formal space, tiered seating, the university crest on the wall, behind the administrative panel. Students attended because it was expected. It was mostly procedural. It was mostly unremarkable. Mary sat near the back with Daniel. She had been watching the pattern of what was being done to her for long enough to see shapes in it, and she had begun, in the last few days, to see the shape of what was coming. She didn't know exactly when or exactly how, but she knew the direction. She had come prepared. The assembly moved through its agenda items, maintenance updates, academic calendar adjustments, a sports funding allocation that drew murmuring from the athletic students in the middle rows. And then the administrative officer, a careful man with a careful face, the kind of face that delivered things and did not take responsibility for them, turned a page and began to read in the neutral, clinical voice of institutional procedure. Irregularities in the original scholarship award of one Mary Asante. Questions regarding due process. A formal public review to be opened, pending documentation. She heard Daniel inhale beside her. The room was quiet. The particular quiet of a large group of people deciding this was not their concern. Students studying their phones, eyes finding the floor. The collective unconscious of people choosing not to be involved. Mary, Daniel said, very quietly. She was already standing up. The room shifted. She felt it, the collective physical adjustment of 200 people registering that something unexpected was happening. She spoke clearly. She had been preparing for this for 2 weeks without knowing exactly what form it would take, but she had been preparing, building her documentation, recording every interaction, mapping every procedural step. She knew the scholarship committee's published criteria. She knew the timeline of her application. She knew the names of every person who had reviewed and approved it. She knew the precise sequence of the interference she had faced and the record she had built of navigating it. She laid it out with the structured clarity of someone who has prepared a case and is presenting it. When she finished, the room was very still. The administrative officer looked at his papers. A few students were exchanging glances now, but the room was in that particular suspended state, waiting to see which way things would fall before committing to a direction. The pause stretched. The administrative officer finally spoke. Though your presentation is noted, you are wrong. He was still speaking when Hale interrupted him. She's right. From the third row, low, unhurried, familiar. The entire room turned. Heir had not planned to speak. He had come to the assembly because his family's association with the university made his attendance at these things appropriate. He had been sitting in the third row with the particular quality of presence he maintained in public spaces, visible, composed, a surface that gave nothing away. And then the administrative officer had begun to read from his paper. He had recognized the shape of it immediately. He knew they were coming for Mary. He knew Sore must have planned something. He had looked at her. She was sitting near the back, and she was already very still. The particular stillness of someone who has been expecting something and has just seen it arrive. Not surprised, prepared. And then she stood up. He watched her speak. The room was quiet, in the way rooms go quiet when something is happening that they haven't been given a script for. She was not performing. She was not making a scene. She was presenting a case, structured, precise, exactly correct, in a room full of people who had decided to look at the floor. He felt something move in him, not urgency exactly, something simpler than that. Something that had been sitting in him since the library table and the garden courtyard, and the way she said, "You sounded like someone who hasn't given up yet." Something that had been accumulating quietly for weeks without his full permission. She finished speaking. The room was deciding. He could feel it, the collective weight of a group of people trying to determine which way was safe. And Quan Hale, who had spent his entire life being careful about what he put his name to and where he chose to place the weight of it, stood up. But when the administrative officer finally spoke and told her she was wrong, he just found himself not allowing that to happen. And against his better judgment, he spoke. Not a speech. He had never made speeches. He stated facts. The scholarship committee's own published criteria, the procedural requirements for a review to have basis. The precise reason this one didn't. He said the word obstruction, and he said it looking at the administrative officer, and he watched the man find something to look at that wasn't him. The room had stopped deciding. It had decided. The review should be closed, he said. Today. Nobody spoke. He didn't sit down. Today, he said again. The assembly moved on. The review was quietly and immediately closed. Afterward, the corridor outside the hall hummed with the particular electricity of a student body processing something they were going to be talking about for weeks. Mary walked out and found the quieter end of the corridor. She stood with her back against the wall and breathed. Her hands were steady. Her chest was not. Daniel appeared at her side. He put his hand briefly on her shoulder just for a moment, just that, and said nothing, which was exactly right. Then, footsteps. The corridor thinning around them as students moved away in clusters, talking, not looking where they were going. She turned. Heir stopped a few feet from her. Daniel read the air the way he always did and took several quiet steps backward without making anything of it. They looked at each other. You had it, he said quietly. Everything you laid out, you had it. Yes, she said. You definitely would have thrived without me. Probably, she said. A pause. Something in his expression that she was still learning to read. Then, he was about to shut me down, though, she said. You know that. Yes. The place went silent. Thank you, she said. Simply. He nodded once. She almost let him leave. Hail. He stopped. Why? She asked. He was quiet for a moment. And then something in his face did the open thing, the thing she had first seen on the library table when they were arguing about political theory, and he had momentarily forgotten to be composed. Like the surface had simply decided to step aside. Because you were right, he said. And that should be enough. He held her gaze for one more moment. Then he walked away down the corridor. Mary stood with her back against the wall. She listened to his footsteps fade. From somewhere behind her, Daniel said very quietly, very carefully, Mary, don't, she said. Daniel, I swear. A pause. Okay, he said. Okay. But she could hear the smile in it. Part 8. After the assembly. The school talked about it for days. The whispers changed direction so fast, they almost tripped over themselves. Did you see his face when he stood up? She had all that documentation, though. I mean, she wasn't wrong. She might have been right, but she's too proud. She wants Heir for herself. Like we didn't come here before her. Sorey must be. Nobody say that too loud. I heard they've been studying together for weeks. In the library? At his table? Her table, apparently. Wait, he left his table for her? I was there. She asked if there was a name on the table. She's insane. She's kind of amazing, though. Sorey found Heir the next day. She came to him the way she came to everything, gracefully, without urgency, as if she had simply been moving in this direction all along and had arrived here naturally. They stood in a quiet corner of the campus, out of the main traffic of students, and she spoke in the low, careful voice of someone who was maintaining composure through significant effort. You made me look foolish, she said. In front of everyone. I made the administration correct a procedural injustice, he said. Hail. The scholarship review had no basis, sorry. You know that. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. Her voice was perfectly smooth. He looked at her. Yes, you do. A silence. Her amber eyes held his steadily. Our families, she said finally. Everything that has been built between them. Everything that is expected. You know what this looks like. I know what it looks like, he said. I've always known. Then act like it, she said. That girl is not part of your world. She came here on a scholarship. She'll complete her degree. She'll go home. That is the whole story. You are. Sorey. She stopped. Don't start, please, he said quietly. Don't tell me what my story is. Something moved in her face. Small, controlled, gone in an instant. She left. Gracefully, she was always graceful. But the set of her shoulders when she turned the corner was different from when she had arrived. And he noticed it because he noticed everything. He came to the library on the next day and sat across from her and did not pretend he had another reason to be there. She looked up when he sat down, looked at him for a moment. I saw you talking to Sore, Mary said. Yes, we talked. How was that? Fine, he said. She looked at him for another moment. Is it going to cause problems for you? Probably, he said. I'll manage it. She nodded slowly, looked back at her book. Ael, she said, without looking up. Yes. Thank you, she said. For the assembly. For, she paused, choosing. For speaking up for me. He looked at her, at the top of her head, bent over her book, the locks falling loose around her face. You don't have to thank me for that, he said. I actually should, she said. They opened their books. The library was quiet around them, the warm, specific quiet of their corner table, and it was, Hale thought, the most comfortable he had been in a room in as long as he could remember. He stole glances at her, and the warmth he felt in his chest. He just knew. He was definitely falling for her. Part 9. The Cultural Night. Daniel had signed her name on the Cultural Night performance list in what she could only describe as an act of cheerful sabotage. I didn't agree to that, she had said when she found out. You didn't disagree either, he said. You just didn't respond when I mentioned it, which I interpreted as yes. That is not what. Mary, you can sing. I've heard you in the dormitory corridor when you don't think anyone's listening. You're doing it. It'll be fine. I'm going to. It'll be fine, he said, with the absolute serenity of a man who knows he is right. The International Cultural Night filled the main hall with a warmth that the assembly had never had. Students performing for each other, something that loosened people, that dropped the social architecture for an evening. Food from every country represented. Laughter that was genuine. The particular atmosphere of a shared thing. Mary sat backstage through the first half of the program and focused on not thinking about the fact that she was going to have to walk out there. You're fine, Daniel said from beside her. He was holding the small drum he had borrowed from the music room. You've been singing that song your whole life. I've been singing it in my mother's kitchen my whole life, she said. That's different. Is it? She looked at him. Is it actually different? He said. Or is it just more people watching? She thought about her grandmother, sitting in the compound at evening, singing to nobody in particular, to the air and the light, and the simple fact of still being there. No, she said quietly. It's the same thing. Right, said Daniel. So, she walked onto the stage simply. Daniel sat at the side with his drum. The hall was warm and full and watching. She closed her eyes. She thought about her grandmother, about her mother at the airport, hands on her face, memorizing, about the smell of the white flowers in the campus garden that was almost like home, about being 10,000 kilometers from everything she had ever known and still being completely, entirely herself. She sang. Kwan Hail was near the back of the hall. He had come because Sore had mentioned it, one of those social appearances that the family's relationship with the university made appropriate. He had planned to stay the minimum amount of time that registered as present. He heard her voice and stopped moving. He didn't know the song. He didn't know the language. It didn't matter. There are voices that exist below the level of language that speak to something in the body before the mind can organize a response, and hers was one of them. The homesickness in it, the love in it, the thing that was both beautiful and painful and didn't apologize for being both simultaneously. The hall had gone completely still. He was still too. Beside him, Sore leaned close, said something near his ear, quiet, precise, designed to interrupt, to reframe, to remind him of what he was supposed to be thinking about and who he was supposed to be thinking about it with. He did not hear it. He was watching Mary stand at the front of the hall with her eyes closed, and everything she was holding, the distance, the strangeness, the sheer effort of being here, all of it transformed into something that filled the room, not hidden, not performed, just used, given to the song, given to the air. He felt something in his chest do something he didn't have a controlled response for. He had been falling for weeks. He understood that now, with the specific clarity of something that has been true for a while, finally arriving in full view. But this was different from all of it. The library, the courtyard, the assembly, all of it. This was the thing that made the falling feel like landing. She finished. The silence held for 3 full seconds. Then the applause began. She opened her eyes and found his across the hall. He didn't know how it happened. He hadn't moved. He hadn't done anything to draw her attention. He was at the back of a full room. But her eyes found his directly, in the first second she was looking, as if they had known where to go. His face was doing something he couldn't control. He knew it. He couldn't stop it. She looked away first. He watched the warmth rise in her face. Kwan Hail stood at the back of the hall and understood, with complete and somewhat inconvenient certainty, that he was entirely finished. She was on the steps outside afterward. Night air, soul humming below and around and above, everything the way it always did. She had her knees pulled up and was looking at nothing in particular. He sat beside her. She didn't look surprised. She waited. "What was it about?" he said, after a while. She was quiet, thinking. "My grandmother used to sing it," she said slowly, "when things were both good and sad at the same time. Like when my mom left for university, or when someone got married. Happy, but also something ending." She paused. "There's no clean translation. The closest I can get is something like, 'I'm far from where I started, but I haven't left it inside me.'" He sat with that. "I've lived in Seoul my entire life," he said, "and I have never once felt like I was where I started." She turned and looked at him, really looked the way she did when she was deciding what something meant. "That's really lonely," she said, not with pity, just as a fact she was acknowledging. "Yes," he said. The city moved around them, a bus somewhere, the wind, the particular blue of Seoul's night sky above the light. "Hail," she said. "Yes. I'm glad you stayed for it." He looked at her. "The song," she said. "I could tell when She stopped. "I'm glad you stayed." He didn't say anything, but he stayed on the steps for a long time after that, and so did she. Part 10, the thing that almost ends it. 3 days after cultural night, he wasn't there. Not in the library, not in the cafe, not crossing the courtyard. His seat across from her stayed empty, and the table felt different in a way she hadn't expected it to feel different, and that alone told her things she wasn't ready to look at directly. She went back to her routine, chapter by chapter, morning by morning. She called her mother on the first evening, and her mother, who could read Mary's voice the way other people read faces, said, "Are you okay? You sound a little." And Mary said, "I'm fine. Tell me about the garden." And her mother told her about the garden. She did not look at the empty table. On the second night, she woke at 3 in the morning and lay in the dark and was finally privately honest with herself. She had let something in. Without planning to, without agreeing to, she had let it in: the table, the arguments, the garden courtyard, the steps outside the hall. She had let herself, and here was the thing she had been not looking at, want something. And wanting things in worlds that weren't yours was dangerous. She had always known that. She had just, for a handful of weeks, let herself forget it. She lay in the dark for a while with that. Then she got up, made tea, opened her research paper, and worked until dawn. Daniel found her on the third afternoon. He sat down across from her, without his usual energy, which told her something before he spoke. "His family called him home," he said. She set her pen down. "There's a dinner," Daniel said. "The Beck family. The kind that's not called an announcement, but everyone knows what it is." She nodded, slowly. "Mary, it's fine," she said. "You don't have to." "Daniel, it's fine. It's his world. I always knew what it was." He looked at her. "You're allowed to not be fine." She was quiet. The cafeteria moved around. Them trays, voices, the everyday noise of a place that kept going regardless. "I know," she said, very quietly. "I'm not." Daniel didn't say anything else. He just stayed at the table, which was what she needed. The fourth day, she was at her corner table. Same spot, same books. The particular, focused composure of a person who has decided something and is holding to it. The library door opened. She finished her sentence. Footsteps, stopping at her table. She looked up. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He stood there for a moment, and something about the way he was standing was different. less composed, like he had used most of what he had getting here. He sat down across from her. I didn't go, he said. She looked at him. The dinner, he said. I didn't go. The library was quiet around them. Hale. I sat with my father for 3 hours, he said. He told me everything. Everything my name means. Everything it requires. Everything that is expected of me, and why, and since when. A breath. I let him finish. And then I told him I wouldn't be there. She looked at his face, the tiredness in it, the cost of it sitting right there, plainly, because he wasn't managing himself the way he usually did. That must have been hard, she said carefully. Yes. And you did it anyway. Yes. She closed her book, folded her hands on top of it. Why? She asked. The same question she always asked him. He looked at her across the table. And for the first time, she saw everything that had been sitting behind the composure. All of it. Not performed, not managed, not a calculated decision about what to reveal. Just him, looking at her. Because I heard you sing, he said, and I understood something I've been not understanding on purpose. He paused. My whole life, someone else has been deciding what it looks like. My father, my name, the arrangement, all of it. Another breath. You told me in that courtyard I sounded like someone who hadn't given up. I didn't want to make you wrong about that. The library breathed around them, dust in the afternoon light from the tall windows. Mary looked at him for a long time. I'm going to the vending machine, she said. He blinked. The one by the east entrance. She stood up. It actually works. Do you want something? Us, 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 us. He looked slightly lost. Yes. Come then, she said, and walked. He got up, followed her. And Daniel, who had been sitting 3 tables away, pretending to read for 45 minutes, watched them go and said, very quietly, to absolutely nobody, finally, Part 11 Sol, Softens. There was a night market 3 streets from campus that nobody from the university went to, because it wasn't the kind of place the students of Hanguk Elite tended to frequent, too loud, too ordinary, too much like a real city, and not enough like a performance of one. Mary loved it. She had found it in her 2nd week, walking back from the library late. She had gone back every Friday since. She had not mentioned it to anyone because it was hers. She mentioned it to Hale. He came with her on a Friday evening, and nobody knew his name, and nobody adjusted the room for him. And he stood at a pojangmacha stall, looking at something in a small paper tray, and said, try this. And she looked at it with deep skepticism and said, what is that? And he said, just try it. And she tried it, and then was annoyed that it was good. You look irritated, he said. Yes, because I was wrong about it. It's actually good, she said. He almost smiled. You can't always be right. Watch me, she said. He did, actually. He watched her try 3 more things at the market with a running commentary that was so dry and precise that he started genuinely laughing. Not the controlled smile of public hail, but actual laughter, quiet and surprised, like it had caught him off guard. She looked at him, when it happened, with an expression that was very carefully neutral and absolutely wasn't. Daniel found them once, at the night market, rounding a corner with his own food. He stopped, looked at them standing at a stall, arguing about something, Hail's face doing the open, unguarded thing that Daniel had never seen it do before Mary arrived. He stood there for 3 seconds. Then he quietly turned around and went to get his food somewhere else. He texted Mary, later, saw you, saying, nothing, you're welcome. She did not reply. He could feel her smiling through the phone. The library mornings became the shape around which everything else arranged itself. They argued about texts, politics, history, power, institutions, with the focused, low-voiced intensity of 2 people who had discovered they were matched in the ways that mattered and found it endlessly interesting. The librarian on their floor had stopped giving them looks and had started giving them the resigned acceptance of someone who knows a losing battle. He taught her Korean words that had no English translation. Nunchi, the subtle art of reading a room and a person. Han, a uniquely Korean word for a kind of sorrow that lives so deep in the culture, it has become something close to beautiful. Jeong, an attachment, a bond, the feeling between people who have shared enough time and enough honesty that they have become part of each other's experience of the world. She turned Jung over carefully. Is there a point at which it's formed? No, he said. That's the thing about it. You don't notice when it happens. You only notice that it has. She looked at him. He looked at his book. She taught him Tui. Akwaba, welcome, but warmer than the translation. Dakye, later, in the future, but carrying the sense of hope in it. And one evening, Oro love, but she explained it carefully, the Akan concept of it, which was not just feeling, but action, not just emotion, but commitment, not just what you said, but what you kept doing. He was quiet for a moment after she explained it. That's a much more demanding definition than the Korean one, he said. Yes, she agreed. I think I prefer it, he said. She looked at her book. Her face was warm. Sorei's final move came on a Thursday. A formal complaint submitted to the scholarship board manufactured inconsistencies, built carefully, the kind of thing that required patience and access, and a very detailed understanding of institutional process. Designed not just to harass, but to potentially remove her most serious play. Mary found out on Friday morning. She sat with it overnight. On Saturday, she went to the scholarship board and requested a formal hearing. Daniel sat at the back of the room when it happened. He had his arms crossed and his jaw tight, and he did not say a single word. Mary stood at the front and presented everything, every document, every timeline, every record of interference she had been building and cataloging for months. Her academic record, which was, at this point, immaculate. She built the argument the way she was trained to build arguments, the way she had come to this country to learn to build them layer by layer, each point supporting the next, the whole structure self-evidently sound. The board chair apologized before she finished. The complaint was dismissed. Her scholarship confirmed for the full remaining duration of her degree. She walked out into the afternoon, and Daniel was on the steps. He stood up when he saw her. Well, done, she said. He pulled her into a hug. She let him folded into it for a moment, allowed herself that. Over his shoulder she saw Heir at the edge of the courtyard. She didn't know when he had arrived. He was standing very still, hands in his jacket pockets, and when he saw her face over Daniel's shoulder, something in him visibly unknotted. His eyes closed briefly and then opened again. She shook her head slowly at him. You didn't need to be here. The smallest lift of his shoulder. I was in the area. She pulled back from Daniel's hug and laughed. It came out sudden and real and completely unplanned, and it startled her the way her own laughter sometimes did when something caught her off guard. She saw it hit him across the courtyard, watched his face do the full, open thing. Everything down, no composure anywhere, just something warm and helpless and completely undefended. Daniel looked between them, looked at the sky. Right, he said to nobody. I'm going to get food. Huh. He went. Part 12, What Was Always True. End of year. The campus was winding down. Exams finished. Students leaving in clusters. Bags and boxes appearing in dormitory corridors. The particular bittersweet quality of a place between what it was and what it would be next. Mary was at her corner table. Her corner table. She had been here every morning for months, and she was here on the last morning, and she was trying very hard not to notice that she was being sentimental about it and failing completely. She heard the library door and knew without looking. He sat down across from her. He didn't pretend to have another reason. They sat in their familiar silence, the morning light through the tall windows, Seoul, somewhere below and beyond everything. When do you leave? He said. Tomorrow, she said, early. He nodded. And you'll be here in September, she said. Not a question. Yes. Same table, he said quietly. She looked up at him. He was looking at her with the open face, the one she had watched emerge slowly over months, every time more fully, every time less surprised by itself. He put something on the table between them. small, wrapped, simply. What is this? Open it. She unwrapped it slowly. A small leather notebook. She opened the first page. His handwriting, careful, neat Korean on one side, English facing it. She read the first entry, then the second. They were not declarations. They were small, true things, things he had noticed and thought and not said. The way she finished her sentence before she looked up. The first time he heard her argue with her textbook and realized she argued with things she respected. The garden courtyard, she said. I hadn't given up yet. I went home and thought about that until it was light. The assembly, I stood up before I had decided to. I think I had actually decided weeks ago. She read pages and closed it. She did not trust herself to read more right now. She held it, looked at him. Hail, she said. You don't have to say anything, he said. I just wanted you to have it. Something real. Something that was true. Today. She looked at him across the table. This person who had taken her seriously from a library courtyard and a song and a question she asked twice and never stopped asking, who had stood up in a room full of people choosing not to and said, she's right without rehearsing it. I'm going to tell you something, she said. Okay. When I got on that plane in Accra, I had one plan. Graduate. Go home. Do the work I came to do. She paused. I did not plan for any of this. I know, he said. I'm not someone who changes her plans easily. I know that too. But I think, she said slowly, that you might be worth adjusting for. He looked at her. Not changing, she said clearly. Adjusting. I know the difference, he said quietly. Good, she said. She stood, packed her things efficiently, quietly, the way she always did, tucked the notebook into her bag with the careful attention she gave to things she did not want to lose. She stopped beside him on her way out. Don't let them take anything from you while I'm gone, she said. The things you've been choosing, hold those. I will, he said. She looked at him one more time. Just once, like she was finishing a sentence. Then she walked out. Through the library door, into the corridor, down the stairs, out into Seoul, blazing and golden and enormous and completely indifferent the way cities are when private things happen inside them. He sat at the corner table, her corner table. In the quiet she had left behind, he sat and looked at the surface of the table, empty now, books gone, the particular absence of a person who had occupied a space long enough to leave it changed. He thought about 20 years of existing in a world that had been built before he was old enough to have a say in it. The name, the weight of it, the rooms that adjusted themselves before he entered them, the conversations that were really negotiations, the smile he did not give publicly because it had never felt like his to give. He thought about a girl asking if there was a name on the table. He thought about you sounded like someone who hasn't given up yet. He thought about a song on a stage that he hadn't been able to not hear. Because she had made it feel possible to be a person and not just a position. Because she had looked at him like he was something worth looking at clearly and not just something to manage or fear or want access to. Because she had, without planning to and without asking him to, made him want to be someone who deserved to sit across from her. Kwan Hail sat at the corner table in the quiet of the third-floor library. And slowly, privately, with the late morning light coming through the tall windows and Seoul somewhere below doing what Seoul always did, he smiled. The real one. It reached his eyes and stayed there. Epilogue, September. She came back. He was at the table. She walked in through the library door, longer locks, the same warm colors, the same unhurried posture of someone who has never needed a room's approval to stand in it. She crossed the third floor, stopped at the corner table, looked at him sitting in her seat. You're in my spot, she said. He moved to the seat across from her without a word. She sat down, set her bag down, settled. Then she reached in and set the small leather notebook on the table between them. He looked at it, then at her. I added pages, she said simply, opening her textbook, while I was home. He picked it up, opened it, to where her handwriting began English on one side, Twy, facing it. Small, true things. He read the first one, then the second, then the third, which made him stop. The third entry was dated 2 weeks into summer. It said, in English, and then in Twi below it, I think Zhong might be the right word, after all. I didn't notice when it happened. I just noticed that it had. He closed the notebook carefully. He did not say anything. He didn't need to. She was already reading, her pen moving, her locks falling loose around her face in the morning light, the same corner table, the same tall windows, the same soul blazing away outside like it had never stopped. He opened his book. They began. Outside, September light fell across the city golden, clear, the particular quality of a morning that is also a beginning. Seoul moved below them, enormous and indifferent and alive. Inside, at a corner table, on the third floor of the Hanguk Elite Library, a girl from Ghana and a boy who had spent 20 years being a name before he became a person, sat across from each other in the best kind of silence. The kind that has nothing left to prove. That was an interesting and riveting love story, don't you think? Tell me what you think we missed in this story. What would you have loved us to add to make the story better? As you know, we always want what's best for you. And if you've not, ensure to smash the subscribe button because we make thrilling videos like this every week, and hit that notification button so you are notified when we drop new stories on our channel.